This conference will now be recorded.
It's funny. It's always take longer when we are more than 20. So together with our 3 colleagues from the European Commission, we will during the next 90 minutes learn and discuss the consequences of the COVID-19 on European Commission funding activities. The goal of this event, of course, is to provide you with useful information so that we all can support the European ICT research community about issues regarding force majeure and their consequences onto proposal preparation and project management. Really would like to thank our 3 speakers from the European Commission who agreed to participate in this webinar while their unit is really under pressure. Please, again, don't forget to mute your microphone, switch off your camera, and if you have any questions, write them down in the chat window. For information, this webinar is recorded. Of course, I miss the 21st seconds. And finally, due to bad bandwidth, I will play the overheads at the speaker's request. I receive a last request from our colleagues, GUIRAO, who would like to provide you with some information and also a request regarding the full proposal check organized by Idealist. GUIRAO?
Do you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Bruno for giving me the opportunity to quickly talk about the FPC. As you surely heard, received the email from Angelos, we are organizing an extra full proposal check for the call that has been extended to June. And I'd like to take the opportunity for this webinar to just pass a quick message to all of you. We have been receiving extremely a lot of proposals. It has been incredibly successful, as we are received by the deadline on last Friday, on that Thursday, my apologies, more than 76 expression of interest for participating to the FPC. And this is becoming extremely challenging in terms of resources. Therefore, we'd like to bring your attentions to the fact that we will need extra NCP on board for rapporteurs and reviewers, and we will need also extra experts in order to be able to cover as much expression of interest. So I'd like to take the opportunity and no more than 2 minutes from now, from this webinar, that Idealist, with the support of the governing board and the coordinator, we'd like to ask for your help for organizing the FPC. Please share the call for experts to your community, and if you are available, please come and register as NCP, as rapporteur or moderator for the FPC in 2 weeks. That's all from me. Thank you. I just would like to remain 76 expression of interest. We never reached that number. It's incredible. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Bruno.
Yeah, thank you, Gero, for this fantastic news. Yes, a lot of work. So don't hesitate, register, and come and help. Okay, now I will hand over to Zoe KETSELIDOU, who will introduce herself and her team before making a brief introduction. Zoe, if I can say, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruno. I opened the camera so that you can see that I exist and I'm not a robot. So now, hello everybody. Now I close it. And from our side, from the Commission side, I would like to thank first all the NCPs for attending this seminar, and also the Idealist project for taking the initiative to organize this, because DG Connect believes that such a meeting with the NCPs is very useful and necessary in order to communicate first to you and via you to the beneficiaries all the measures that the Commission has taken in order to facilitate this situation. We have done a lot of things, and it is important that our beneficiaries know what their options are, what the possibilities are, and can choose what is best for them. We don't want our FAQs and the call extensions to stay only on the site, the website. First of all, I would like to say that we are doing our best to facilitate the life of the beneficiaries who understand that this is a very difficult situation for everybody. But you have also to understand that we have our own restrictions which come from the grant agreement, so we cannot do anything that is against the clauses of the model grant agreement. We cannot do anything against the contract that you have signed and we have signed. But what we are trying to do is to be flexible as much as possible and try to find ways to go around some of the clauses of the contract so that we can help as much as we can. For your information, we started acting on this situation on the 13th of March, when we first extended the deadlines for calls which had immediate closing dates, and for some health-related calls for obvious reasons. And since then, we have extended even more call deadlines. My colleague, Francisco GUIRAO, will present the call extensions specifically for the DG Connect calls. Regarding project management, we have started with the first batch of FAQs, frequently asked questions, on the 24th of March. And since then, we have published more FAQs in batches. We are on the 5th batch as of today, and maybe we have more to come. Dimitra, PECHLIVANI, and myself will present the frequently asked questions, but we have grouped them by subject, so it will not be question by question. We will present you all the issues, again, related only to H2020 projects, because I saw there was a question about Erasmus+. We don't have Erasmus+ in DG Connect. This is specific. This info webinar is specific to DG Connect actions. And regarding H2020, we will focus on the actions that DG Connect supports, so we will not touch upon specificities of other types of actions like ERC or Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. But you can find answers to questions about these specific actions on the website. So if we go to the next slide, please, the Commission in April has prepared the Corona platform. Actually, it is the CIC, Common Implementation Center, that has prepared this. It has all Corona-related issues, as you can see from the transparency. The call deadline extensions are there. So on top of what Francisco is going to present, you will have the deadline extensions for all the other calls for H2020. You can find there the FAQs, again for H2020, but for all types of actions. And you can also see two more entries. One is the coronavirus specific projects, because the Commission has already on the 30th of January called for an expression of interest, and by now we have 18 projects from the health sector that are working on coronavirus. They started on the 1st of April and will last for 2 years, a total budget of 48.5 million euros. Then regarding funding opportunities, you can also find on the same site national activities, but we have it by country. and funding opportunities that those countries can provide. And also they see funding opportunities. I have put the 2 links here. You have to go for the top link. You can find it as soon as you open the funding and tenders portal. It is very visible there. And inside it, you can find all those different sections. For the EC funding opportunities, maybe it is a bit difficult to navigate, so I have put the link here. When you receive the slides by email, you can open the links, those 2 links, and go directly there. So this is all from me. I hope we will have a nice and informative meeting, and I give back the floor to Bruno. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoe, for this information. Yes, the website is really updated and very useful for me. I'm using it a lot. So next proposal or first presentation will be from Francisco GUIRAO on proposal submission and call evaluations. Francisco, your turn.
Okay. Hello, good morning. I also try to switch on the camera to also as so I say that I'm also not a robot. I don't know if it works. Okay, yeah. I hope you can see me for at least for a moment. And then my presentation will be short. It's only to talk to you about what we have done about the extension of calls or postponing deadlines. This was an action we did as soon as we received the request from member states that due to the lockdown due to the coronavirus, there were many proposals that they would need more time to present their proposals. We made it, as Zoe mentioned, first to the Societal Challenge 1 calls, so that they are the ones related with health areas. Of course, this was obvious that these calls, they would need more time. So we moved then from the 22nd of April, we have 2 calls that they were closing 22nd of April. We moved then to the 18th of June. And then with a little more time to examine the calls, we were also looking after other calls. We consulted, in fact, member states, and between the option to move it to only delay for a few weeks to 2 months, the answer was it was better to postpone for 2 months. So here you have in this table all the changes we have made to all the calls. Okay, they were we saw that now the new deadline for most calls that previously were 22nd of April now are 17 or 18 June. Depends on this difference was depending on the ones who we move earlier, we moved to 18th of June, but then for technical reasons, the rest we moved to 17th of June. As you see also there are 2 exceptions of 2 calls because they have the deadline a different date, we have moved to 2nd of July. So that's the new deadlines. In fact, for Societal Challenge 1, as I said before, for the health-related calls, we asked member states that they would like to even postpone them further. And then the answer was no. That's because on the one hand, it's good to postpone the proposals, the calls, to have more time to prepare proposals, but also people would like to start work in the different areas and they would like to restart work as soon as possible, and therefore they didn't ask for any further extension. So we have done this extension. We have the deadlines later. On the other hand, the message that the people would like to start project as soon as possible. That was also received by us, and that's why you see in next slide we propose we have to commit it to do evaluation fast. And that's how I'm going we have our plan to do evaluation is that we are going to do the evaluations during summer, July and August. Normally, we don't do evaluation during these months because also because people like to take holidays, especially it's always difficult to recruit evaluators during these months. But in this year, we consider that was very important to finish the evaluations at the beginning of September, so that we can invite proposals to start preparing the grant agreement at the end of September. So that then our plan is that by the end of the year, December, we can sign the maximum number of grants, and we can also do the pre-financing, the payments to proposals still in December, still in this year. We only hope only a few grants are signed at the beginning of next year, and the pre-financing paid at the beginning of next year. The reason is to follow this request by member states, that the projects can start as soon as possible, and in the majority of them at the beginning of 2021. So that's what we're going to do. Of course, this will require an effort both from the Commission services to work during July and August, but also especially for evaluators that we hope we are able to recruit during this month, so that then we do evaluations and they are finished by the end of August. Okay, so that's the message I want to pass. Then I want to ask one question I already received. So in next slide, some people were asking if
maybe Francesco, because it's
yeah.
a quick question here. We have two short questions. What about FET Open? About the evaluation of FET Open, is it going to be also speed up? That's the first question. And the other question is, what does this RCETNF means?
Sorry,
what the
NF, okay, is when we're going to say notifications. NF means sorry, yeah, I should maybe explain a little further the terminology we use here. The idea is on this this presentation is that then we are going to do the evaluation over summer. Remote evaluation is when we the R means remote evaluation is when we are going to we are going to ask evaluators to do the individual evaluation of the different proposals, and then we do what we call central evaluation. Normally, this central evaluation is what normally we do on site here, when people come here to Brussels to do evaluations for consensus meeting and panel meetings. In this case, of course, as we don't expect people are allowed to travel, or we cannot organize big meetings in Brussels in July or August, then what we'll do is the same, but remotely. We will do consensus meeting and panel meetings remotely during that weeks. Then we have to do, after we finish this evaluation, that is at the beginning of September, we have to do the process of selection of proposals. That then this is when we send we do the internal meetings to select proposals and decide what proposals are going to be selected, of course following the ranking panels by experts, and then we expect to send the notifications, the letters, by the end of September. We will try to advance this as much as possible, because then from the notification, when we send the letters until we can sign the grant agreements, is the process of grant agreement preparation that normally takes 3 months, and this is really necessary, not only for us, because it's also because it's when people need to adapt the proposals, and there's an interaction between Commission and the proposals, plus then the approval by the member states, by the committees. So this takes this more or less these 3 months. That's why we'll try to advance the notification as much as possible. Then on the question of FET Open is not done directly by us, but it's done by REA. I don't have the information here now. I will check it, but I imagine they also would like to accelerate the process, and they also would like to have it ready in the same as we are doing in the Commission, in the central services. In any case, I'll check that with FET Open, and if necessary, we'll send you further information. But I imagine they are doing similar thing. Okay, so then the question is, there were some people asking if in the proposal, the people have to explain what happened if there is a lockdown and so on. And then I think for that, what proposals should do is to work as normal, in the sense that we already have an our in the our criterion number 3, quality and efficiency of the implementation. One of the evaluation points, one of the consideration we do to evaluate this our criterion is that the people should include in the proposal and a risk assessment and with a table, and then we ask the evaluators that they assess if the proposal has taken into account all the risk in the proposal. Of course, 1 year ago, the coronavirus was not a risk. Nobody put in any proposal anything similar to that. But now that is known, it's logical that people will look looking at the timetable, looking what may happen when they start the project and what are the risks if there is a lockdown by this time. And therefore, when we ask also for a table with critical risks identified and the mitigation actions, and therefore it's logical that our proposal will include something now related to coronavirus, or what will happen and if next year we have another lockdown, or if there's still the situation is still not back to normal. Therefore, it's nothing exceptional. It's something that always we ask for all the risk and for all assessments. But logically now, coronavirus lockdown or coronavirus restrictions is something that, of course, they should take into account in their proposals, not as a special thing, just as part of a normal proposal in identifying this risk. I don't know if there's any other more question. Okay, I think you already answered the 2 questions that are in the chat. I don't know if there is any other question.
Up to now, no. The one I received, I did send them this morning, but you already mentioned, should we include in proposal under preparation dedicated session on COVID-19? So you address that one?
No a special one, only as part of the risk. Of course, it should be one more risk more that, of course, I mean, it's look at the other way around. If an evaluator will see that one proposal that maybe is depending on the possibility to do meetings or to do assessment with people and so on, and don't include this risk. This is a risk how they can do it if they cannot organize things presentially or and so on. Of course, they could be negative for the proposal, so they have to take into account this risk and say how are the mitigation actions they will take to avoid this risk.
Yeah, we have a question from Marta that say, do you mean that in the case of a future lockdown in 2021, this won't be taken into account as a force majeure?
Well, this will be explained later more for the people in contract what to do about force majeure. But of course, the question is not that this will not take into account. Is that, as I said, that now, I mean, look at you are an evaluator. You look at proposal that is proposing things that you know that there is a lockdown, they cannot do. Of course, you will negatively assess this proposal. They have to tell you what they're going to do if they cannot do these actions. They will ask a plan B to what to do in case of this action cannot be taken into account. Otherwise, another proposal that proposes you to another plan to do the things probably will get better assessment. It's just that it's one risk more that now cannot be avoided, cannot be ignored, because it is something that everybody have to take into account.
Yeah, clearly. After we have some questions which are more general, such as, but Zoe, you will tell me, or Paco, you will tell me, such as, for example, what is the influence of COVID-19 on forthcoming Horizon Europe program? But I don't know if you have an answer on that one.
No, well, in fact, we already have many unknowns. The question, of course, is Horizon Europe is spending on the approval of the budget for the next 7 years, and this, of course, the COVID has an influence on that, and therefore there is an influence. But of course, we cannot solve the political unknown. We are pending on how this the political agreement on the budget for next 7 years, and what this is solved. Then, of course, we will see the influences.
Yeah, and closer to us, we all know that we are all waiting for the Green Deal program and the forthcoming call for proposal, if possible, in September. And the question is, do you think a dedicated call on COVID-19 will or could be launched in the framework of the Green Deal program? But here again, I suppose it's a political question.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what already was said by Zoe, and people can see it, that we have already, what we have done, it is all the resources we have available. We have tried to put together to launch additional calls for COVID, and then therefore probably any other further call will need a political agreement for that, because we have used all the resources now available on the present calls. Any other extra call will need a political agreement.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? I'm looking to the chat, but I don't have any more. Let's see. No, I don't have any more question. So Francisco, I would like to really to thank you a lot for this first part of the presentation. And
Okay, thank you.
I know you have to go back to work to other meetings. So thanks again, and have a good day.
Okay, thank you, and I hope the rest of the meeting is good for all of you.
I'm sure it will. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So we're now moving to the, oh, by the way, I haven't shown my face on the camera that you can see there is someone also here. So I don't know if you can see me, but maybe yes, maybe not. So we are now going to the second part of this webinar to discuss about the implementation of the grants in 2020. So we have Dimitra, PECHLIVANI, and Zoe KETSELIDOU. I suppose, Dimitra, will you start?
Hello. I'm starting, yes.
Okay, good.
Can you hear me? Yeah. The picture will come shortly as Zoe dates. No. Hello, everyone. Okay. So Article 51 of Horizon 2020 Multi-Grant Agreement defines force majeure as an extraordinary and unforeseeable event or situation that is beyond the beneficiary's control that prevents them from fulfilling their obligations under the action. The current COVID-19 situation qualifies for such force majeure situations. So what beneficiaries must do is immediately inform the Commission, agency funding body, and take all necessary steps to limit any damage due to force majeure. For instance, trying to cancel the tickets. The Commission, of course, will examine the application of the rules on force majeure on a case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. The first question that crosses one's mind is, of course, the postponement of the starting date of the action. And here, this is very clear for the action that is about to be signed. So actions in grant agreement preparation stage, where a postponement of the starting date is possible. And for grant agreements already signed, but with the starting date in the future, a postponement of the starting date is possible via an amendment, but bear in mind that no work has started yet. In both cases, a starting date fixed later in time will delay the pre-financing payment. Next slide. And we have also the possibility of suspension of action implementation due to COVID-19 outbreak, when it's not possible to carry out any work under the action, and beneficiaries may request to suspend the implementation of the action in accordance with Article 49, Paragraph 1 of Horizon 2020 Multi-Grant Agreement. However, costs incurred during action suspension cannot be charged. Now, with regard to eligibility costs, in order for costs to be eligible, they must fulfill the general eligibility conditions of Article 6 of Horizon 2020 Multi-Grant Agreement, like any other costs incurred under the action. And the most usual example is that of cancellation of a meeting event that cannot take place due to force majeure. And in that case, travel and accommodation costs may still be charged to the Horizon 2020 action if they fulfill the general course eligibility conditions, even if the beneficiary did not travel, did not take part in the meeting event. Next slide, please. Question. What happens to costs when there are difficulties in implementing the action due to COVID-19 pandemic? For actual cost-based H2020 actions, the Commission will show maximum possible flexibility in relation to the action implementation. Of course, telework and other forms of remote working is encouraged when it's possible. Teleworking costs will be accepted as eligible after the confinement period, even if it's not the beneficiary's usual practice to telework. And beneficiaries are also highly encouraged to shift their tasks whenever this is possible. For instance, tasks where a physical presence is needed on the ground, lab work may be postponed until the confinement measures are lifted. And meanwhile, remote work can be done instead. Costs will still be eligible for the work carried out under the action, even if such shifting entails deviations from the initial timing set out in Annex 1. Next slide, please. Travel costs in relation and flexibility in relation to beneficiaries' usual travel cost practices. Again, for travel costs to be eligible, they must fulfill the general eligibility conditions of Article 6 of Horizon 2020 Model Grant Agreement. And very important here that they must be incurred in connection with the action as described in Annex 1 and be necessary for the implementation of the action. However, given this unprecedented pandemic situation, maximum possible flexibility again will be provided in relation to the beneficiary's usual travel cost practices. And travel costs will be accepted even if the beneficiary has to depart temporarily from its usual travel cost practices to tackle exceptional individual situations. Next slide, please. Another question that comes up is what happens to the equipment that was exclusively purchased for the action implementation, the cost of that equipment. So for such equipment that has been purchased exclusively for use for the action implementation, beneficiaries are entitled to declare the full corresponding depreciation costs, even if the equipment is not being actually used by researchers due to COVID-19 pandemic. Cost of new equipment that was not operational before the confinement measures can only be charged to the project from the day on which its depreciation starts. You have to bear in mind that only depreciation costs for the equipment recorded in the account of the beneficiary can be actually charged to the action. Next slide, please. And of course, in the case of force majeure, there might be extra costs. And what do you mean by extra costs? It can be, for instance, the cost that the beneficiary might pay for the cancellation of a conference that is reorganized at a later stage. So these extra costs may still be eligible if they're indeed necessary for the implementation of the action. But this very important here is that the maximum grant amount cannot be increased. Next slide, please. So, of course, the situation of force majeure brings also the obligations on the side of the beneficiary to actually prove the situation of force majeure. And they have to submit supporting documentation. And in general, in accordance with Article 18 of Horizon 2020 Model Grant Agreement, beneficiaries must keep appropriate and sufficient evidence to prove the eligibility of all costs declared, proper implementation of the action, and compliance with all other obligations under the grant. Now, given the exceptional unprecedented circumstances, beneficiaries might have to depart from the usual practice of keeping records or supporting documents. So, in case of force majeure, beneficiaries must keep all documents necessary to prove the eligibility of costs incurred, like any other costs incurred under the action, as well as all documents proving that have taken all necessary steps to limit any damage due to force majeure. And for instance, they can submit emails aimed at cancelling, changing tickets, emails claiming the reimbursement from the cancellation insurance if this is applicable, emails proving that they try to change the flight, again, the tickets if this is possible, any kind of such documentation. In most cases, it's emails. And now supporting documentation with regard to, sorry, next slide, please. To the timesheets. So that the beneficiaries if the employees cannot sign or have their timesheets countersigned due to COVID-19 pandemic situations, so how can beneficiaries support the hours worked actually in the action? And again, in accordance with Article 18 of Horizon 2020 Multi-Current Agreement, for personal costs, beneficiaries must keep time records for the numbers of hours declared or sign declaration of exclusive work for the action. The time records must be in writing and approved by the persons working on the action and their supervisors at least monthly. However, due to COVID-19 pandemic and the related confinement measures, the beneficiaries might encounter difficulties in obtaining the monthly signature of their timesheets. Or if an electronic signature is not possible, the Commission will accept any of the following two options. Either the signature of the timesheets be delayed until the confinement measures are lifted, or an electronic version of the timesheets that can be sent by email to the supervisor, who approves it by replying by email to the person concerned. Of course, the beneficiaries must keep the original timesheets with the signature of the person plus the acceptance email for supervisor. Yeah. Next slide, please. And I think this is the last one, supporting documentation with regard to proving any difficulties in implementing the action. In such case, beneficiaries must keep all documents necessary to support the explanations included in their scientific reports. And by all documents, I mean, for instance, emails exchanged during teleworking periods, or the paper or electronic documents used instead of the lab notebook usually in place of the beneficiary's premises, etc. Yeah, this is on my side. Thank you.
Okay, Zoe, would you like more things on this slide, or would you prefer to move directly to the question sent by my colleague yesterday and the day before? Or do you prefer me to ask the questions?
I prefer that I continue, and then at the end of the presentations, we start answering questions, please.
Okay, good.
So for the next slide, following on from Dimitra, I would like to begin with the delays in submitting the deliverables and reports. We understand that this is very normal during this situation. The projects cannot prepare the deliverables in time, cannot meet the milestones in time, and most importantly, they cannot prepare the reports that are linked to payments. And regarding those delays, we are very flexible. The project officer is not going to chase the projects. They can just inform that they're having difficulties and they will be late. Regarding reports that are linked to payments, we all know it is 60 days after the end of the reporting period. Again, we are flexible. The coordinator can just inform the project officer that there will be a delay of a month, 2, 3, 4, but of course this means that a late report will lead to late payment. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that again we are trying to be flexible. Interim payments are important, we understand it, and of course we cannot do payments without financial reports. Those have to be sent. But what we can do from our side is to lighten a bit the scientific report. So the narrative part of it can be short, focused only on the key achievements, on the explanations of the difficulties, a few pages or 2, 3, and also the deliverables. Maybe they are not ready, so they will not be submitted at the end of the reporting period. But nevertheless, if we have the financial reports and a very basic scientific report, we can pay the project, of course, under the condition that at the next reporting period, the missing deliverables and a more extensive scientific report will be submitted. For the final payments, we can move to the next slide. The situation is a bit different because here we have the certificates on financial statements. And here we are trying again to be very flexible. We can pay without the CFS, those beneficiaries that cannot obtain it, but the contract says up to the threshold of 325,000 euros. So we cannot do anything more than that. We pay up to the threshold, and as soon as the CFS is submitted by those beneficiary or beneficiaries, this is by beneficiary, we can provide a complementary payment. Now, if the final report cannot be submitted because the work of the project has not been accomplished, the coordinators can ask for an extension of up to 6 months. And we can see in the next slide that regarding requests for extension of the action duration, we are trying to be as flexible as possible. Which means that if the request is because of the COVID-19 situation, and if it is up to 6 months, it will not be rejected. It will be treated favorably and swiftly. And the procedure will be light again and quick, not too many justifications to prove that there is a force majeure. We know this. In the case that the project needs more than 6 months, then this is up to the project officer to approve, or if the project officer cannot approve, they can give the standard 6-month extension, and later on see if they need to give a further extension. Again, here Dimitra also mentioned, budget is the only thing that we cannot really increase. It is very complicated for us, and you understand that all those measures are within the maximum amount that the project that is in the grant agreement. There are some specific situations like the lump sum pilots. I'm moving to another subject now. Next slide, please. For the lump sum pilots, the specificity is one of the specificities that we can only pay at the end of reporting periods when a work package is completed and the deliverables arrive. So what can we do here? Either play with the reporting periods or with the work packages. The project can ask for an amendment to adjust the reporting period, to extend the action duration, or to rearrange tasks, or all three of them, with the aim that they can have completed work packages at the end of periodic periods. Another specific situation has to do with public procurement. So, in the case of public procurement, where a lot of projects happen to have subcontracting or purchase of goods, works, and services, and we know, we are aware of the issues on the supply side, and we also know that procurement has even been on hold in some countries. So what we can propose, always according to the model grant agreement, to extend those procurement contracts, of course in line with the legal framework in the country where it takes place, and maybe if maybe such an extension of the procurement contracts will require an extension to the whole action duration, so they have to go together. The next slide has to do with the expert contracts. So, as Paco said, the evaluations will be done remotely. So, regarding the expenses of those experts who have already bought their tickets or have made their hotel arrangements, and this is the case especially in March and April, in the beginning of the crisis. If those are not covered by travel insurance, they are reimbursed. If there was a travel insurance that was purchased specifically for this trip, the costs are also reimbursed. But of course, before cancelling, the experts should contact the EU services that are with which they are in touch for their contract. And regarding the fees, they stay the same. It is the same cost for the expert, whether they had to come to Brussels or to work to do the evaluation remotely from home. Regarding the expert contracts for reviews, the project reviews will be delayed or held remotely. This is something that the projects have to arrange with the project officer. And so for those reviews that have already started, the organization has started by the project officer, the experts, there will, if the date is changed or the location will be changed anyway if it is remotely, contract amendment may be needed, but the rules of reimbursement stay the same. Another issue is the redirection of work. Without extra budget, I have not mentioned it here, it goes without saying that some projects, particularly in the area of health, but of course even projects in DigiConnect having to do with digital issues, etc., teleworking, they can ask for a direction of work. So even if this is different from what the call asked for when they originally prepared their proposal and got the grant, they can ask for an amendment to redirect the work if they are capable of doing something related to tackling the COVID-19 situation. And of course, those requests will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Normally, this should be the end of the presentation, but surprise, surprise, we had this morning 2 more frequently asked questions published on the Corona platform. So I would like to touch upon them. If you don't mind, Bruno.
Please do so. Excellent.
Okay. So I did not have the time to prepare transparencies, but right after the webinar, I will prepare a couple and will send them to Bruno so that he can distribute them to you. But I think those new frequently asked questions are important because we have received a lot of questions about those issues. So the first one has to do with the salaries of employees who cannot telework. These are issues that come with experience of watching the situation evolve. So in the beginning, we had questions on whether we reimburse we pay the same salaries, whether people work at the office or the laboratory, or if they telework. We said, yes, it's the same thing. We pay them because they still work. And then we realized, via your questions, that there are people who cannot telework, those that work in laboratories, for example, those that are supposed to do field work. So are they paid or not? Here, the problem was, that's why this question took so long to be uploaded, that the Commission cannot pay. Our projects are actual cost projects. We pay for work that has been done. So those workers researchers who stay at home and cannot work, they cannot declare fictive hours. This is a thing that we take for granted. So the only way around, I don't know who came with this idea, is that from the beginning it was calculated how much money each employee will receive per year based on the three methods to calculate the hourly rates. The amount per year stays the same. People will send to the Commission the actual hours worked, annual productive hours for 2020. And of course, if you divide the total budget, the total, all the money that they were going to receive by the reduced number of hours, the hourly rate will increase, and in some cases, substantially. This we accept. So this is the only way to go around and have people receive the same annual amount that we're supposed to receive for 2020. We know that there are three options to calculate the hourly rates, and different projects have opted for different options. Those who have what I described is option 2. Those who have opted for option 1 or option 3 with standard annual productive hours can opt for option 2. They can change without an amendment, I think. And those who have opted for calculating monthly hourly rates can change the methodology and move to annual hourly rates so that they can use option 2. And last, if those people get any unemployment benefits from their country, those have to be subtracted from the total for 2020. So this is the first question. It is very well explained if you read the text on the portal. I will prepare a couple of slides for this. And the second one has to do with delays to finalize an action. So as I said before, we are very flexible with extending the projects, but of course this means that the payments will be made later, whether they are interim or final. When a project wants to receive is close to finalization, and they were supposed to submit the final report to receive the remaining amount of money. If they have reached 90% of the grant amount so far from the other interim payments so far, we cannot pay more. The 10% retention stays. But if they have not reached 90%, they can add an extra interim period in the project so that they can be paid until 90%. I don't want to go into details. The project officer will know how to deal with this. We just want to make sure that all projects receive the 90%. For me, those are gymnastics around the grant agreement, and I think it takes good intentions and some imagination to be able to, from on one hand, to keep to be in line with the model grant agreement, and on the other side to accommodate as much as possible the beneficiaries in view of this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoe, for these two questions. So in the meantime, we received two questions from Marta Calderaro. The first one is, does a considerable shift of task or work packages require an amendment? More precisely, when do you think an amendment should be required if the core activities are not affected by the overall situation?
Yes, this is something that is that will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, and this is why the project officer is there. How you what you consider core or not, what makes sense or not, this is something that has to be agreed with the project officer. I cannot say more than that.
Okay, seems completely logical. And the second question regards national health system. So, can you please clarify is a request from national health system to support an hospital is considered under Article 51 and is at the basis of a request of extension or suspension of the action? If my accent is not so understandable, you have, of course, a question in the chat, Zoe.
Yes, the question, yeah, I can read it. Yes, of course, it is considered under Article 51, and so the project has to get in touch with the project officer and request an extension or a suspension, depending on what is more beneficial to the project. We are flexible, and of course, we understand those situations that health-related projects are more heavily affected than other projects.
Okay, and then we've got a question from Gerard Kennedy, who say, can redirection of work lead to an increase in budget? I would answer no, but maybe you've got an answer.
Yes, it is no, unfortunately, yes. It is redirection, so it is not the expansion of the core work of the project. It is not to add something extra. It is to change, and instead of doing something, do something different.
But Zoe, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but even if it was extra, can't say that the maximum grant amount cannot be increased. So no increase in budget.
Yes, this is
in any case.
Sorry, the sound was not that clear.
No. It's a big no.
Yes, I think this is what I said, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that one.
Yeah.
So we have a short question from Marta. Should the coordinator send the official request to the project officer? So I understood that the single point is a project officer. Am I correct?
Yes, yes, a big yes.
Okay. And then we've got from the questions sent by our colleagues before today. Let me see. Can we expect a simple process from the Commission services to deal with project coordinator request? So this has been done. It is a simple process. We understood it. A funny question. Interesting. We hear about the projects getting additional funding. For example, project to launch additional FSTP. What are the conditions for getting additional funding, and what should projects do if they are interested? Okay, I don't understand the end of the question, but what are the conditions for getting additional funding?
Can the person who has asked the question elaborate a bit further? What kind of projects have received extra budget? Because I'm not aware of this.
He's mentioning this FSTP, meaning cascade funding, yeah. But I was not aware too, so that is interesting.
I'm not aware either.
We will come back to you about this. What I can answer for now is that funding opportunities, either at national level or commission level, can be found on the web, on the platform for research. And there, please keep an eye, because there might be new calls that will open. But extra funding for additional for existing ongoing projects, I'm not aware of it. We will send you a reply in writing.
Okay, I received some information. So they say it's a digital innovation hub call with cascading grant project that get extra funding. But let's wait a little bit so that you have some time to think about it, and I will send you the question.
Yes.
And Giro say, yes, you're right. It's a digital innovation hub hero. So it might be difficult to reply online. So let's take some hours or day to reply.
Clarification question on that. Is the project, the action that gets additional funding, or the cascading grant is raised? I don't know, because I'm not aware of that.
I understood in the question that it was the cascading fund that was extended.
Okay. I'm not aware. But we'll get back to you.
Okay, and then we had another question. Are there any specific policy on the COVID-19 outbreak for international cooperation projects?
Not as far as we know. They are talking about the existing framework program or the next one. For the existing, we're not aware of anything so far. For the next one, as Paco said in the beginning, those are political decisions on the budget for the next 7 years. So maybe yes, maybe no.
Okay. Any other question from the audience? Up to now, I don't think so. So as far as I understood, what is nice is that the European Commission was really flexible to extend the deadline for the coming calls. It has been a long discussion to know if we had only had 2 weeks or 2 months. This was decided by the Commission of having 2 months. I think it's very nice. The evaluation process has been shortened, and then you're going to work during the holiday break. It's very nice too. As far as the contract extension, so it's also very flexible when you request up to 6 months, an extension up to 6 months. After, of course, this has to be dealt with the project officer. And as far as the payments are concerned, the European Commission can pay up to the CPF limit without having the document in hands, but after, of course, had to receive the CPF document. Let me see. I got a compliment from this question on international collaboration project. I will read it. For international collaboration project, specifically in joint calls, countries could face different restriction and lockdown policies. Will the situation of the international partner be taken into account in evaluating extension requests?
Yes, of course, it is exactly the same way we treat the other projects. We treat this kind of international cooperation projects. Yes, this is nothing different.
Yeah, it's clear. It's funny because you can see in different countries, you cannot go to Germany before 15th of June, and you cannot enter in France between 15th of May. So it's different countries by country. So thank you for your answer. Okay, so I don't have any more question. Maybe you would like, there is another question from Marta, a question on the evaluation process. So are you going to have a specific evaluation for proposals who mention in keywords the themes COVID-19 or pandemic or other keywords related to this?
Yes, Paco is gone, so, but I have not heard of anything like this. For each call, there is the evaluation criteria, and for the calls that are already out, there is nothing specific on COVID-19, and if those are changed for the calls to come, we'll come back. I doubt it, but I would prefer to check first.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I saw that, for example, for the European Innovation Council, for the last call, the 3 or 4 days before the deadline, so they say that proposal tackling COVID would be appreciated, and they receive, I think, hundreds of proposals with the specific keywords. So it might be interesting to get this question. Okay. So thank you very much again to you, Zoe and Dimitra. Maybe do you want to say last sentences on that webinar?
Dimitra?
No, but only one thing on the initial agenda that you sent us, Bruno, and you had a point on judicial review. And if you want me, I can say words on that.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. So as you know, on the Horizon 2020 Model Grant Agreement, there's only article on dispute settlement. So in order to review the EU decision, the Commission decision, we follow the normal rules for any challenge of any EU decision. That is, so you can bring an action before the courts. Of course, it's the governments, but there are cases that individuals, organizations, and companies that think they feel that their rights have been infringed, they can bring action. So that is the case in the present case as well. However, as I've said, the Commission will show maximum possible flexibility in assessing cases. So we don't think that there is going to be a need to bring an action before the court. That's it. I don't know how relevant, but I've seen it on your initial email, that's why.
Well done. Thank you, Dimitra, on that. So all remember that there is the portal from the Commission. Many information are there. Most of the question you can find answer there. You will receive in a few minutes a feedback form, for this webinar. So please, your opinion is very important for us. You know that we have 2 or 3 other webinars to be organized this year, and it's always nice to improve this activity and to make this webinar more interesting for all of you. So if there are no more questions, once again, thank you, Zoe and Dimitra, and thank you for all of you that attended this Idealist. And a last word, thank you a lot for Angelos, who really helped me with this webinar, and also from Nizza. So that's it, it's time to go for lunch. And once again, thanks to all.
Thank you, Bernard.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.